Hi, my name is Tom, and this is my review of the Nikon D3000. Nikon D3000 is one of Nikon's entry-level digital SLRs. It has a 10.2 megapixel CCD sensor, opposed to most of the sensors now being put into the DSLRs, which are CMOS sensors. There are some advantages to this camera, and there are some disadvantages. What I do like about this camera, it was an affordable camera. It's still going for about $550 with the kit lens, 18 to 55 kit lens, I believe. Some places are selling it a little bit lower now because the 3100 was released. If you do have the money, I would recommend the 3100 because it has, I believe, a 14 megapixel CMOS sensor. It also allows you to shoot 1080 HD video on the new 3100. But that doesn't mean that this is a bad camera. The D3000 is a good entry-level camera. If you've never used a digital SLR before, there's a guide menu on the wheel which will actually guide you through most of the functions on the camera and explain most what they do, and will help you get shooting. But it's not completely beginner because it also allows you to go fully manual, and you can shoot up to shutter speeds of 1/4000th of a second, which is pretty fast. There are some disadvantages to this camera. One, the highest ISO, it goes up to 1600 unless you go into high one, which I believe is 3200. At those ISOs, you're going to get a lot of film grain, so I don't recommend using those. Usually I will use it up to 800 ISO and still have usable pictures then. Other than that, there's not as many buttons as some of the higher end models. There's no front dial, so you can't change your aperture and your shutter speed independently. You have to use the same wheel, and you have to press down on the button in the front and then spin the wheel to change your aperture when you're in full manual mode. Another disadvantage is the low light. The 3100 that was released is much better in low light. If you can afford that, I'd go for the 3100 because the low light performance is better. Not just because it has the movie mode, but you'll be able to shoot in lower light, the picture quality will be better, you're going to get better results. One thing that's interesting about this camera is it has a function button on the side. If you look at on the side, the opposite side of the grip, it has a FN and for function, but it has also the self-timer. It defaults to self-timer. What I like to do is you can go into the menu, you can change what the function button does, because honestly, if you're going to use a self-timer, you're not using that constantly. It's not something you're going to be using every time you're shooting. So what I change that to is ISO. So that way I can hold in that button and then go to this wheel in the back and change the ISO from there. It takes a lot less time than going through the menus and doing that. Another disadvantage is the lens that it comes with is an 18 to 55. I don't have that on there anymore, but the 18 to 55 is a decent focal length, a good lens for beginners, but I believe the f-stop goes from 3.5 to 5.6 if I'm correct. It does not give you a very wide open aperture. You're not going to be able to shoot in low light, and considering that the ISO performance is not very good on this camera, you're not going to get good pictures even when you bump up the ISO. I do recommend buying a second lens. It has at least f2, f1.8 aperture. It's going to give you a lot more light, even if it's just a prime lens, just because the prime lens, you're not going to be able to zoom, but it's going to teach you to go towards your subject if you can't zoom. Other than that, the camera is good quality. Another disadvantage I would say about it is does not have the Nikon CLS system, I believe it's called, where you can wirelessly trigger flashes. If you want to do flashes off camera, you're going to need to get either pocket wizards, radio transmitters, or you're going to have to get one of the cables that go from the hot shoe to the flash. So it is a disadvantage. It does have a built-in flash. I don't use a built-in flash because it's straight on flash. it's just going to give you bad results. So, do I recommend this camera? I would recommend this camera before the 3100 came as an entry-level DSLR, but now the 3100's out. So I would go for the 3100 if you can afford it. If you really can, if you're really on a tight budget, yeah, this will still do the job. The picture quality is still great. Even though it's an older sensor, it still is a great performer. If you're willing to spend more money, if you're willing to move on to, if you already know the camera, if you already know how to use this stuff, I'd go for the 7000, which was released, which from what I've seen from reviews and sample images, it's an amazing camera. But that one runs up a lot. So the Nikon D3000 is a great camera for beginners, and then you can easily get out of those automatic modes and get into full manual. You can start shooting the way you want. I guess it's not too much more to say about this, but yeah, it's a great entry-level camera. I've been using it since, I believe, September 2010, so getting close to the 6 months there. Not there yet, but yeah, I've been using it for about that long. I've invested more money in lenses, different equipment, but yeah, it's a great entry-level camera, but if you can afford it, go for the 3100.
Composed